Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Market Down Podcast. My name is Nick Cummings, joined this week by Danny Hernandez. We are here once again to review the latest episode of AEW Dynamite. And forthwith, we start, good word, Nick, we start in the main event where we saw Darby Allin take on Samoa Joe for the TNT Championship in a no-holds-barred match. This was bloody, this was violent, and it was awesome. Darby Allin came out in his entrance in a sweatshirt just covered in thumbtacks because he's an absolute madman. And upon entering the ring, he immediately sprinted at Joe, getting Joe all, thumbtacked up. And Darby gets a couple of shots in with that before Joe just flat out knocks him down because Joe's bigger. Joe then goes to cleverly get his towel, wraps it around his hand, and just absolutely decks Darby before peeling the sweatshirt off of him. Joe then jumps to the outside to go get a table from under the ring, but as he is lifting it in front of his face, Darby just fucking throws himself into the table because, like I said, madman. And the table goes right into Joe, busting Joe's face open. So then Darby runs directly at Joe after sliding the metal steps out to try to drive Joe into the steps, but Joe sidesteps him, and Darby somehow goes over the step, hits the steps, goes over the steps, goes into the barricade, hits the barricade, and goes flipping over the barricade into the stands. I don't know how he got that much momentum, but he did. And it looked really cool. Anyway, they end up fighting up the stairs into the crowd until Joe just grabs Darby and flings him back down the steps and brings him all the way back down until they get to the floor, where he just puts Darby into the steel steps pretty much every which way possible, and then proceeds to dominate Darby for much of the match until later. Eventually, Joe decides he's had enough of just beating up Darby and goes to get some chairs, and he takes them into the ring, puts their backs together, and just drops Darby's back clean onto them. And I've seen that spot before, and it never gets any easier to watch, especially as somebody with back problems. Just Anyway, Joe then flips the chairs around and goes to powerbomb Darby through the seats. But Darby had grabbed some powder from somewhere, I don't even know, and he throws it in Joe's eyes, which disorients Joe, and Darby is able to hit a code red, but Joe then kicks out. Darby then goes to put on the thumbtack sweatshirt, and he is able to do that, and he lands a coffin drop, but Joe kicks out again, prompting Darby to go outside and under the ring to grab a blade, and he starts cutting all the ropes that hold the mat down so that he can expose the boards from underneath the mat. It took Darby a little while. I think Taz made a joke that he should have gotten a better blade, and he was probably right. But Darby is finally able to do it, and then jumps back in the ring, and he sees Joe has gotten up. So Darby goes for a tope, throws himself at Joe, but Joe had grabbed a water bottle because Joe is easily top 5 smartest wrestlers right now. Joe, in kayfabe at least, Joe grabs the water bottle, cleaned all the blood and powder off of his face. So Joe sidesteps it as he normally does, and Darby goes flying through a fucking table. So then Joe brings Darby back into the ring. He power bombs him into the thumbtack sweatshirt and then wraps it around Darby's face. And Darby counters by gouging Joe's eyes with his thumb. Darby then grabs a chair, hits Joe with it a couple of times to knock him down, and climbs back to the top rope. But Joe knocks the referee, who I think was Bryce Remsburg, into the ropes, causing Darby to fall up onto the turnbuckles. Joe climbs up, hits an avalanche muscle buster into the exposed boards. 1, 2, 3, and Samoa Joe is now 2-time TNT champion and undisputed king of television. As he's celebrating, Wardlow's music hits. He's back. He's got a sweet new haircut. I actually really like it. And he comes down to the ring, takes down Joe with a double leg, and starts raining in shots. Wardlow then steps off for the Powerbomb Symphony, but Joe is able to wriggle free and hightails it up the ramp. And as we go off the air, Wardlow, in an ode to James, who is not here tonight, just took out a bunch of security guards. So, Danny, like I said, I like this match. It was really hard-hitting. It was really violent. I think both Joe and Darby play off each other very well, and the addition of weapons and tables and chairs and stuff only added to their chemistry. So I'm a little disappointed Darby's title reign ended, even though he had a fantastic and just frantic run with the title, which I think honestly elevated it again back to kind of where it was before Cody grabbed it. But I thought they had more to do with his title reign, but I'm really happy with this match despite the outcome. And I do think there is a future with Joe and Wardlow fighting for the title again.
I
That was a
think
lot. I'm
I agree
sorry.
with that. No, it's okay. He's just doing a good job. I do like producer boys chat. Next thing, Darby's gonna go through a flaming table and end up in a different company the next week. Uh, that's really really good. But anyway, sorry, Dropkick JD. James
Also,
isn't here, and we spoiled it. But
what's up, JD? Good to see you,
it's
man.
just YouTube things. We don't make the rules. We just are obligated to follow them. But this match was fucking gruesome. Like so many of the spots you mentioned were just great, fantastic, hard hitting, good stuff. But like, when Darby was in the Coquina clutch and just like reached back and put his thumb in Joe's bloody eye, like I didn't like that. Like that dude, I don't like that kind of
It was good. I liked it, but
Yeah, no, like it was good. I hated it. It was so good though, but like I don't like seeing I don't want to see that. It's good. It works because it made me uncomfortable, but like I don't want to see shit like that. The fact that he happened to be bleeding there too was just made it all the more worse. But it was a good match with a lot of the spots just kept escalating and escalating, and you know sometimes I think AEW does that too much. But when it's like Darby Allin and then the other guy's Samoa Joe, who hasn't looked this badass in like 5+ years, I'll take it. I'm not thrilled that Joe won, especially because it seems like he's just going to lose it to Wardlow, which, more spoilers, JD. But I don't know. I'm not thrilled about Darby losing it, but like this match was fun and Joe is so good. It's kind of more like both these guys are great. So like either way, we have a good champion for however long it lasts. But I think we need to just settle down a little bit with the hot potato. I know MJF's going to be holding the world title for a long time, so the company probably feels more inclined to change the TNT title more to have title changes still, especially because none of the other titles are changed. Well, actually, the tag titles might change hands, and that's really scary to think about. But I get that, but like, I wish Darby had like 4 more weeks of this. Like, just give him 2 months of doing that instead of just 4 weeks. But good match, not enough or too much violence for one match, maybe, but fun violence either way. So good for it's. If it was anyone else but Samoa Joe, I'd be probably more upset about it. But Joe's so good that I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, it's fine that he has the belt now again.
yeah, it's weird because I was saying when Joe initially lost the title, I was like, oh, I thought this, King of Television bit had a lot more legs to it and he could have done more and it could have went longer. And I felt the same way. I was like, but it's Darby and I'm okay with Darby winning. And now it's literally flipped. It's, oh, I thought Darby's title reign had more legs to it, even though he kept up that, that frenetic pace that he was at. And he, like you said, I think he defended the title like 6 times in those 4 weeks or something, plus had to go to Japan for the Muda stuff. So the man was going like crazy. But I still thought there was more to tell with him with the title. But I'm okay again because it's Joe getting the title back. And I feel like he could have just went longer title reign for Joe, have Darby win it, longer title reign for Darby, and do all this in one shot instead of just bouncing it back and forth. But I do think you have a good point there. I do think AEW has not only always felt they could, ping pong this title a little bit, but they also probably feel like, okay, this is currently the men's title that can be changed more often. Because I don't think the All-Atlantic title is there yet. I still think it needs to be established a bit more, and Orange Cassidy is obviously doing a great job with that. But I'm not sure if they're there for it yet. And because this is like the workhorse title, they're probably like, okay, it's all right if we do a title change only 4 weeks after we did the last one.
Yeah. Excuse me 1 second. I have a meowing cat outside my door.
See, when you come to the Market Down podcast, folks, what you get is animals. We had Wednesday here on Saturday after the Royal Rumble. Now we have Danny's cat interrupting the proceedings. There we are. Hello, Gato. Special guest appearance. All right, there we go. And he's back.
All right.
I was just saying, and this is what you get on the Market Down podcast. You get animals almost every week now. You got them on Saturday. You got the cats here tonight.
Oh, so I had to break. Man, I'd break image. You guys got to see those in my pajamas.
It happens. But yeah, no, like we were saying, I think like I was just saying, AEW does feel far more comfortable changing the TNT title even 4 weeks after the last one, especially after the type of title reign Darby just had. So I'm cool with this. Are you cool with? I think you did touch on it a bit, but now we have Wardlow back in the mix. I think his new look is awesome. I love the haircut, but we're getting Joe versus Wardlow again, and I liked it the first time around, but I don't know. I thought that seemed kind of done, even though I guess I already knew Wardlow was going to come back after Joe cut his hair. It was kind of inevitable.
It seemed like it was done being for the title. Also, real quick, here, and I agree with James G. Sante in the chat. Cats are a gift from above. Yeah, even you about to fucking meowing us on my door for 10 minutes. Like, fucking hell. God damn it, man. I gotta install a cat flap. Anyway, yeah, I think Wardlow, I just don't love that it's for the title. I mean, I don't have strong opinions on his new look. He just looks more like a manager now, I guess. He looks a little more corporate. But, other than that, it's good to see him back. I think he can easily, rekindle that spark he had and get as over, or at least close to as over as he was. And that's all good. But do you think Wardlow, when he rents his cars to travel to the show, do you think he goes into the like Enterprise or wherever and then slaps the car and says, how many miles does this bad boy get? How much horsepower is in this girl right here, and then slaps it?
Horsepower, yes. Mileage per gallon, I don't think. That seems like more of a dad thing, but I feel like Wardlow would be a guy who would want a car, probably a truck with some good horsepower to it. That seems to make sense.
How long do you think it'll be until he guest stars on the Slap-In show that takes place after Dynamite?
I don't know, because I think that show is going through a lot right now, so I don't necessarily know if AEW wants that exposure at the moment, with everything surrounding Dana White and obviously the show itself. But maybe if there's a second season, I think that whole thing's already done, like taped wise. So I genuinely have no idea.
Thank you for taking the question seriously.
No, because I do think that's a legitimate question. People do cross over into UFC sometimes. So
yeah,
considering they're not only owned by the same guy, but Dana White doesn't technically own it, but they're run by the same guy. But also too that it's on the same network. There is a legitimate possibility that could happen, but I just don't think for this season.
Yeah, and it's like, do you remember when every wrestler in WWE was like a guest star on like Monk and Psych and all those USA shows?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. I gotta let this cat out.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna try to rattle off all the USA guest stars now. Like, I know Cena and Big Show were both on Psych. Big Show was in it a couple of times. So was Cena, because Cena's Juliet's brother. So he was in it, and he's phenomenal. He's in one of the movies too. I think the second movie, the first movie. Yeah, he's in whatever. I forget which one he's in, but Cena's in one of the Psych movies. He like shows up at the end and kidnaps Sean and Gus to go on their hunt, their bachelor party or whatever. It's pretty fucking funny.
Okay, there's Psych movies first of all. Also, she changed her mind and didn't want to go, so I got up for nothing. But yeah, John Blattner said hi, Betsy.
Oh yeah, James Miz was on like fucking everything. A bunch of them are showing up now on this new Barcade show to the point where Sasha Banks showed up because there was taped a long time ago.
Are you talking about that? What is going on here?
This cat is causing pure chaos to this show tonight.
Grayson's been here the whole time. You haven't heard a freaking peep out of her. She's doing like she's rolling out. She's having her own bug out. It's like just off camera.
There we go.
She knows.
Now she's stalking, and pounce. Ah, so close.
What are you doing, Bessie?
I will say, Danny, I do have to agree. I'm not opposed to Joe versus Wardlow, but you're right. Like it being for the title, especially at this point, I don't know. We had it for the title. Joe cost him the title, and then Joe beat him. And I think what was a title? I don't know if it was a title
triple
match.
Threat. He beat Hobbs in it, and then he defended it in the rematch.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then he cut his hair. So and then Darby beat Joe. So I don't understand why this still needs to be for the title. This should just be for a grudge match. Dude took his fucking hair.
Darby and Joe are so bad, or no, Wardlow and Darby are so bad at like knowing when to run in. Like Darby ran in after Wardlow got his haircut, and now Wardlow runs in after the fucking finish of the match. Like guys, this is your first time doing wrestling shit? Like, what are you doing? Like, oh my god, she got a good grip on my thumb. It just like it's so weird, but they have to pay off this feud one way or the other. And maybe they want to give Wardlow a second chance champion and have a better run, and that's okay. If they do a better job. Oh, damn it, Betsy, you will, Grayson. I want to leave. This is so much going on here. Anyway, what happened after this?
Well, I was going to go back up to the top of the card where we had John Moxley versus Hangman Adam Page. I will recap the match while Danny continues to handle his gatos. Mox came out with his dad because they were in Dayton, Ohio, just a short drive away from Cincinnati. He also came out with Wheeler Yuta, but let's be realistic here. That's not nearly as important as him coming out with his dad. And then as Hangman came in down the ramp, Mox jumped him, and a brawl ensued and went into the crowd. Goodbye, cat. After they made their way back into the ring, Mox introduced a chair to the proceedings, and Hangman is able to get a hold of it and just absolutely wing it at Mox's head, busting Mox open right over his right eye because death, taxes, and John Moxley bleeding in a match. Also, it was at this point there was a very interesting note in the commentary, so I will come back to that. Just remind me, Danny. Anyway, later in the match, Moxley is able to get in the double underhooks, but Hangman is able to block both attempts at either the Death Rider or the Paradigm Shift. So Mox changes up into an armbar, but Hangman is able to get his toe on the ropes. Then Hangman is able to send Mox to the outside, and he climbs up for his Orihara moonsault, but Mox dodges it and then hits a lariat on Hangman, who actually landed on his feet. He stumbled a little, but he was pretty much able to land on his feet, so good balance by Hangman there. Anyway, Moxley then brings Page over to the announce table to put him through it, but Hangman is able to go into a lariat battle, which he then uses to hit a pop-up powerbomb on Moxley and puts him through the table. Mox then barely beats the 10 count back into the ring, and he's immediately met by a Hangman lariat and then a Deadeye, and Moxley is able to kick out. Moxley then hits a King Kong lariat of his own where Hangman kicks, and then Hangman hits a small package pile driver, hi Tyler Black, and sets up for the buckshot lariat. Hangman then goes for it. Mox counters for the Death Rider, but Hangman is able to counter that and hit a tombstone pile driver. And instead of pinning Moxley, he then goes back to the outside for the buckshot again. Page is able to hit it this time, but Moxley surprisingly kicks out. I deadass thought that was the end of the match. And Hangman is immediately transitioned into a bulldog choke of his own. Mox is then able to shift his weight, and because it's his own move, he knows how to do that. Gets Hangman's shoulders down for 3 count and gives him the win. After the match, Hangman's pissed, saying Moxley got lucky. There's some pushing and shoving between Page and the members of the BCC that came down to get between them, along with a lot of middle fingers. And both men want to, keep fighting because I don't really feel like either of them thought they truly won that match. And then eventually Hangman leaves. So this match was very hard hitting. not in a different way than the main event. You know what I mean? That was violent and hard hitting because of the weapons and stuff. This was just two dudes. Well, as JR says, as Taz said, it was a slobber knocker. These dudes are just trying to knock each other out because that's the entire plot line to this story. But it ending in this way, I feel like did a decent enough job at protecting Paige, but I think, and on purpose, it left me wanting more. And I think because it left both those men wanting more as well.
So, oh my God, I know I wanted to just yell out in agreement when you mentioned it, because I didn't want it to go unmentioned, but I loved the finish of this match because I loved that Moxley knew how to counter his own goddamn move. Like,
right?
That's such a small detail. That was my favorite part of this whole freaking match. Like, where I was just like, oh, this is all cool. The brawl's fun. You know, like I would have liked more time before this match happened, but like it was a good match. It was just, you know, these two big names coming together is always going to feel nice. But freaking the roll up to counter his own move. Oh, so good. It's just those small details that I love when wrestlers pay attention to them. And that was beautiful. And the ending in a roll up is really good, especially because that roll up looked so good. Like it's a pin and predicament I don't remember ever really seeing. I probably have seen it before, but I couldn't tell you where. It didn't ring a bell. I'm just covering my grounds in case it's been done in a match I've definitely seen.
Yeah, like you see them sometimes off of submissions, but rarely a bulldog choke like that. You know what I mean? Like, because Moxley had to shift his weight, like throw his hip out, come all the way around, and then like almost over the top of Hangman to get his elbows down while still in the choke.
Yeah, and then the way he had to step through it too in a way that his legs ended up holding the pin down, where you thought he was just moving his legs for positioning, but it really was setting up this pin. It was such a good pin. And when you pull out a unique pin like that, that's when it's okay to win with the quote unquote roll up, which it's barely a fucking roll up. Like that really is a pinning predicament. Like
I do love that phrase.
Yeah. So, like I love when Cassidy does it. I love when Darby do their trademark. I'm like, yeah, like that's the kind of pins that are okay to win matches with, because it's not a fucking roll up. It's not a regular like schoolboy roll up. Like it's a real move. It's a legitimate move to win with, especially when you catch someone off guard. So I love that. And this is one of the few times where I'm okay with the fact that this is clearly going to lead to another match. So that's pretty dope. I'll take who the fuck knows. I mean, they're going to do some sort of extreme match, whether it's a no DQ or I'd be down with the last man standing. That'd be pretty dope.
That's what made sense to me after this, because these guys at this point, they almost don't want pins. They just want to knock each other the fuck out.
Exactly. It's not about, that's why it's not just the Hangman loss. It's that it's the way he lost, where he's like, that's not decisive. Like, I'm able to get up and walk away. So did I really lose this match?
Yeah, I got a lot left in the tank. Meanwhile, Moxley's on the ground. So
exactly. So this was all good shit. I'm excited for the rematch, which is usually not the case on these sorts of situations. So I'll take it. And Claudio was on TV, and isn't that nice?
Wheeler too. I don't know if they're gonna do it right away. Like I didn't think they were, and then you said last man standing. I was like, yeah, maybe, but they already did 3. It's like, do you want to do a 4th?
Well, when one, the first one being the way it was, I think you can get away with it. But I mean, they could push it off for a little bit, but I mean, why not do it at Revolution, right? Like,
yeah, I guess you could say like, okay, the first one Moxley won, but it was due to medical stoppage. So if you throw that one out, they're 1-1.
Yeah.
Hangman pinned Mox clean, Mox pinned Hangman clean, even though Hangman was probably winning, in terms of still having some stamina left. So yeah, last man standing at Revolution does sound pretty cool.
Which is a nice, you just said that about him still having stamina left. And that's, I know this match wasn't like super, super long, but Eric jokingly said about Hangman joining BCC in the chat, but Hangman having a match end when he still had stamina sounds like Bryan Danielson to Hangman about a year ago. So, like I think Hangman is learning a lot from the BCC one way or another, but yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on that. But that was just a fun connection since you said stamina that made me think about that.
Well, I don't think he'll join, but I think it's gonna end up being however way this ends, whether it's Heyman coming out on top on Moxley, it's gonna be one of those things where they're gonna be like, I don't really like you, but god damn it, do I respect you type of deals, you know what I mean? And they'll probably like shake each other's hands, and then that'll be the end of it because they're both faces. The note I wanted to make that I mentioned while I was recapping the match. No, Excalibur said during the match that he was talking to Mox earlier, and Moxley said that despite the fact he's lost in AEW before, his loss to Heyman was the first time he ever felt like he really got beat. So I thought that was really a really cool point to this as well, like, and just another layer where Moxley really just wants to beat this guy. And he lost, he beat them, I guess, the first time, but it was, like I said, medical stoppage. Actually, I shouldn't put that in finger quotes. That was a medical stoppage, but
supposedly,
yeah, no, dude got knocked the fuck out. I'm glad he's okay. But the second match, Heyman beat him, like he said, and now this one, Mox almost got away with one. Like, he outsmarted him, yeah, but is that really going to give him the satisfaction of beating Heyman and getting that win back? I think that adds another layer to this match and only adds to, I think, the prospect of a last man standing match.
Yeah, and that was just a nice way of phrasing that that was his first time losing clean, because everything else was like
another good point.
JF, Kenny cheated. I guess he lost clean to Lance Archer in a last man standing match, but like the fact that I said that just reminded anyone listening that happened.
A, completely forgot it happened, and B, yes, that's clean, but last man standing matches do involve weapons, so you're not really getting. Even Moxley would be like, "Well, I didn't get beat there; I just lost."
Yeah, So yeah, that's good way, and we'll see how it goes. Now that I've said it, I really do hope this leads to last man standing match, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and then we'll get another. What is it? It's a month or so of build to that, which I think would be cool. Okay. After that match, we had a quick promo package for the TNT Championship match, which main evented. And then we had a backstage interview with Jamie Hayter and the Bunny, who was obviously flanked by Butcher and Blade. The Bunny challenged Hayter to an eliminator match next week on Dynamite, which Hayter accepted. And then Renee got word that something was happening in the back, and they showed it on the TV screen, that Saraya and Toni Storm had jumped Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, as she came into the arena, and were just absolutely kicking the shit out of her. And then we didn't find out what was going on there until later in the show. Next up, we had the Acclaimed versus two guys who looked like they fell out of Miami Vice in the 80s. This was a jobber match. It was so quick I didn't get their names. The Acclaimed literally hit their three big moves and won. So this was barely a match, but there was a rap, Danny. So would you please review the rap for us?
Sure. It wasn't they were only facing jobbers, so it wasn't the best one. So it's only really like a 6.5 out of 10. I will say that I didn't know they were facing jobbers until the end of the rap, because when he said the line about like midlife crisis, I just saw two blonde guys in the ring, and I was like, yeah, the Ass Boys wouldn't get an entrance. They're really not big stars. I was like, oh, the midlife crisis, and they do look like they're 42, even though they're like young kids, So I was like, that makes sense. And I was like, oh wait, it's jobbers, and not is unnamed jobbers, not the Ass Boy jobbers.
I'm sure they put the cryon up, but I never saw it.
Yeah, I'm sure they did too. And even if I did see it, I would have actively not remembered, because, but hey, good on the jobbers for trying to get over for a few seconds by doing the scissor, and, that's fine. But I guess we got to talk about what happened after the match, right?
Yes, we do. So after the match, the Guns come out and ruin all the fun. They want their shot at the AEW Tag Team Championships, and they want an answer to their challenge from last week. Bowens talks some shit and asks the crowd if the Ass Boys deserve a shot at the titles. to which the crowd obviously says no. So then they all start getting in each other's faces. There's some pushing and shoving. And Billy pushes them apart and decides he's had enough of this shit. And he goes, if you guys want to beat the shit out of each other, you can. I'm done. And walks off. So then Austin, I think it was Austin, grabs a mic and he goes, go ahead, walk away like you always do. Maybe you should go drown yourself in a bottle of pills like you used to. This pisses Billy the fuck off. And he comes storming back into the ring. And he starts to say, like, you boys think you have your big boy pants on now. But then his mic cut out and he slammed it. So,
but like, it didn't.
It didn't. I thought you thought it did.
The volume ever go out? We heard him loud and clear.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't know why he slammed it, but it made for an interesting moment after because he had to stare Austin down. And Austin, honestly, I don't know if he was trying not to laugh or he was just genuinely doing a good job of acting. But either way, he was like trembling. And when they zoomed back in on them after Billy got a new mic, Billy was like, look at me when I'm talking to you. Pick your head up. And he like had to like go up trembling, like looking at Billy. And Billy was like, you boys, he finally gets back to what he was saying. It's like, you boys think you have your big boy pants on. You think you have what I had. Then you can prove it next week on Dynamite. And he makes the tag team championship match. So despite that little hiccup with the mic, I actually really liked this. Like it and maybe not the whole thing. It was fairly generic up until that point, but just that end there and that little piece with Billy, I thought was phenomenal.
It was, it was good stuff. How funny would it have been if the Acclaimed asked the crowd if they deserved the rematch and the crowd said no, and then the segment just ended. Like, all right, well, that's that. That's settled. But no,
I was kind of hoping it did, honestly. I was kind of hoping this, like, okay, they all say no, and then what happens? So, like,
yeah, structure-wise, it makes no sense. But like, sometimes you just want that, right? It's like, when you're watching a movie, you're like, why can't the characters just communicate, and then this fight wouldn't be happening? Like we wouldn't. But it's like, oh, then we wouldn't have Civil War, and it's like,
what was the plan if they said yes?
But
you're really banking on people hating the ass boys there. And I know a lot of people hate them, but you are really banking on the crowd playing along.
Yeah, like what if the crowd says like, yeah, well, we want to see a title match, so I guess so, But it was good. The Ass Boys were really good here. The only problem is that we just saw this, and it gives me that sinking feeling that they're gonna win the tag titles. But it was good that they called Billy out. It's I get it. Billy was like really offended because he's, he used to take pills and now he takes steroids instead, which is like technically an upgrade in this specific case, in this one case. It's okay to take steroids when you're old.
Tried by a doctor.
Yeah. Or when you're old anyway, and who cares? Like, you're not doing anything else, you might as well take some steroids. But
quick disclaimer, we here at the Market Down podcast do not endorse the unauthorized use of steroids. Please continue.
Yeah. I'm saying I believe that a doctor has prescribed him steroids. I'm not saying that doctor is good. I'm just saying that he probably has a prescription. But you should give some to Danhausen. But it would just be funny. Yeah, this was a really good segment. It's just the problem is that ultimately it's the Ass Boys. As the only thing that's like, Billy Gunn is so great right now, and the only thing that can tarnish this beautiful image that he has with us is nepotism. Like, because up until now, it's always seemed like he's in on the joke that his sons aren't that good, and whether it was him liking Danhausen on like Danhausen's vlog or whatever, or now him choosing the Acclaimed over his own sons, it's that looming feeling that this is it. And if this is how the best tag team in the history of AEW loses their titles, that's going to be depressing.
Not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. I don't think there's any way that they take the titles off the Acclaim right now. They're way too high. How do you're going to do it on a Dynamite and not at the pay-per-view in 4 weeks?
They won it on Dynamite.
Fair, but I don't think you take the titles off your hottest act on a Dynamite. I'm sorry.
I don't think you take it off your hottest act, period. But
No, I agree with that too. But if they were to
they're
lose in
going
the
to
near
this well.
future, there's
They're
a
going to
perfectly
this
good
well.
pay-per-view right there.
Like, why go to the well again so soon? You know, like, and the nepotism angle of it all. You know, like, I love Daddy Ass as much as the next guy, but like, you know, remember who he was in a faction with. You know, not exactly. You know, think about how Road Dogg talks about Bret Hart and people now. Think about how as Triple H is the fucking savior of WWE, but let's not forget, you know, the cage match got bumped and he had to have his stupid little segment after, and then the match after, you know.
At least they're having the cage match.
Yeah, it still feels shitty, but we'll
It
talk
did.
about
No,
it
it
this
did.
Monday. We'll talk about this Monday on the Raw review because I'll probably do it because I'm sure that cage match is gonna be like 20 plus minutes. Because
Be
of
sure
that.
Danny's Raw Fast Forwards live Monday nights after Raw.
Yeah,
Right here
every
on
Monday,
the Market Down Podcast.
no exceptions. But I just have that feeling. I hope I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, then hey, it's just good wrestling booking and an angle that it's planted those seeds of doubt so I can genuinely watch the match with my, you know, my disbelief suspended. You know, like it's gonna be nerve wracking in a way to watch. So that's good. And I'll feel something, you know.
Look at you actually being a mark. All right, let's move on. After that, we had a backstage interview with Jungle Boy. It appears the whole Jungle Boy Hook tag team is, I don't want to say dead, but they're going to put it by the wayside for now, much to the relief of this podcaster. But Jungle Boy says that while he had fun teaming with Hook, you know, and Hook had his back when nobody else did, he wants to go out and do things on his own and win a singles title by himself. So good for you, Jungle Boy. Let's do that. And then after that, we had Konosuke Takeshita, I said that too fast, versus Brian Cage. And I took no notes on this match because I was engrossed by it the entire time. I fucking loved this match. The end of the match was Takeshita won after an avalanche brainbuster and then hit a flying knee. But this was awesome. Like, it wasn't as hard hitting as the Moxley Hangman match, but these dudes were still laying it in. And then on top, you know, because they're big guys and they're powerful guys. So you got a lot of those awesome moves, but they're also insanely athletic. So you're getting just a level of athleticism where, like, you just weren't getting that out of the first match, you know, and no disrespect to those guys, but like they were able to just combine those three things into something I honestly wasn't expecting in a match in the middle of the card, especially when I saw Brian Cage. I was like, oh, Takeshita is awesome. Like, I'm going to enjoy watching him. But him and Cage, weirdly great chemistry. I would love to see this again. This was awesome. It was everything I wanted out of this match and more.
Oh man, I actually don't even know how to follow that.
I love Takeshita, man. I love this guy. He's my new favorite wrestler.
That's awesome. Well, hey, he got a freaking win on TV. That's fantastic. That was my big highlight from this. Was like, as soon as I saw this match happen, I was like, oh my god, he can finally win a match on Dynamite. Fantastic. It's like, you know, you got to imagine Brian Cage still hates being there, but yeah, this was good. They did have good chemistry. You're not wrong. So Cage, when he clicks with someone, it's really good. It's just when he doesn't, that it's like whatever. But
yeah,
fun match. Absolutely, the right guy won, especially with what happened later, which we'll get into. But yeah, I don't echo everything you said to the degree that you said it, because that was, I think, the happiest I've ever heard you. But
in a while, yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Good job. Takeshita finally got a win. We'll take it.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just really excited because it just completely like outdid my expectations of a match in the middle of the card with Brian Cage. But I think I'm really, really happy that Takeshita had a great showing and they've been talking about this on commentary. He's got such like a groundswell of support that's just been built up from him coming in and having amazing matches. You know, early on he had them with Mox and Eddie Kingston. He had one with Bryan. Everybody he faces, he looks really good against, despite the fact he didn't really have any huge wins. But he was also going up against big stars in the company, at least on Dynamite and Rampage and stuff. So losing to those guys didn't necessarily look bad, but we all wanted him to win. And now that he's in a position where he's, he can win, I'm really excited. So also, James, I forgot. James said also he could lose next week. Please tell me who he's facing next week. I don't remember.
We're gonna talk about it later. You know who it's got to be in your notes who he's facing.
Oh, I do. Never mind. We'll talk about it later. You don't have to put it in the chat, James. Even though he's probably going to do it before he hears that. Anyway, I forgot about that. Thank you. Hype is real, but let us move on so we could get there. Unless you have anything more on the match.
No, everything I have to say about Takeshita is going to be when we get to when he shows up on the show later.
Takeshita TNT. No, Takeshita All Atlantic title this year. Book it. Okay. After the match, we had a backstage interview with the Jericho Appreciation Society. Sammy and Danny have created the Garcia Guevara gauntlet for Ricky Starks to run through to get another shot at Jericho. I guess MJF being with them for a little while did rub off because now Ricky Starks has to go through Cool Hand Ange, Daddy Magic, and then either Garcia or Guevara. Ricky will find out night of. And then he beats all of them. He can then get his rematch with Jericho. Early prediction, he's got to go through both Garcia and Guevara in the same night, maybe at the same time. We'll see.
Interesting. Why does he have to earn the he beat the guy? Like, that's silly. That's really silly.
Because they're just being assholes. That's it. They're being assholes. And Jericho hasn't beaten him straight up. He only beat him in the tag match the other day.
Why should Jericho get to dictate the terms of a rematch?
Because he's the heel and it's Chris Jericho. It's pretty much it. It's pretty much it. Rasslin. Don't think about it. After commercial, we came back to the Elite at a basketball court. Kenny's back in the country. He got his visa issues all worked out. Thank God. Anyway, they challenged Top Flight and AR Fox to a trios title match next week. I believe I had that. Stokely Hathaway then interrupts.
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, he interrupted the Elite, right?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I forgot we had trios championships. Holy shit. Okay.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, Stokely Hathaway interrupts with Ethan Page, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah Cassidy, and they all start bitching that the Elite have off this week and they're not going to wrestle because they're big stars. So Ethan Page offers up a match on Rampage in a trios match between himself, Matt Hardy, and Isaiah with the Elite. And the Elite accept, with Don Callis saying that if Kenny is able to hit a one-winged angel on Matt Hardy, it'd make a pretty sweet NFT. I like Excalibur called him out on NFTs not being worth anything right after that. Okay, we then go into Bryan Danielson versus Timothy Thatcher, which I was looking forward to and was still good. But the first thing I wrote was Danielson was probably so giddy for this match. He was probably looking forward to it so much. He just got to go on there and grapple with one of the best grapplers in the world for like 15 minutes. So he probably had a good time. Obviously, Bryan came into the match with the partially separated shoulder, and he had it covered in tape. So I was just a target for Thatcher throughout the night. It was, like I said, it was a really good grappling match. I thought it was going to get a little bit better, but it was still really good. And then it started to pick up towards the end, and they started doing more striking and stuff. But at a certain point, Bryan grabbed Thatcher from behind to try to get a chokehold in, and Thatcher backed them both up into the referee, who was slammed into the corner for a nice little ref bump there. MJF then comes down the ramp, putting on his Dynamite Diamond ring, but out of fucking nowhere comes Takeshita, and he blindsides the shit out of MJF and starts beating him up and chasing him into the back. Thatcher then uses a distraction to lock in his Fujiwara armbar, which he uses as a finisher, but Bryan is eventually able to make it to the bottom rope. There's a little more back and forth between the two of them before Bryan is able to duck a strike and hits the Busaiku knee for the win. After that, we immediately cut to backstage where MJF and Takeshita are still brawling before it's broken up by officials. And then Renee comes in, and Renee should get hazard pay for going between the two of them. She comes in and tells both men that Tony Khan has made an eliminator match between MJF and Takeshita for next week. So that's what he's doing next week. And yes, James is going to lose, but the match is still going to be fucking awesome. So going back to the match, though, Danny, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was a good grappling match. I think it was one of those things where I've seen better. So it didn't necessarily live up to the hype or the expectations I had for it. I guess kind of as opposed to the Takeshita Cage match where I had a lot less hype for it and it blew me away.
Oh man, we're like two ships passing the night here because I really liked this match. I thought it because I didn't watch, I'm not freaking crazy like Chad or Nick are to watch NXT past its fucking prime. So I didn't know anything about Timothy Thatcher really besides the name. So seeing this, I really liked it. I really liked his style. I liked him. I liked how we worked with Brian. I like how everyone works with Brian, but like this felt like right up Brian's alley. Like I'm like, oh, this is one of the type of matches. This is why he's here, because he wants to wrestle guys like this and have matches like this. So I really like this. Like it absolutely wasn't the best, match Brian's had in this feud with MJF, but it was so fun. It was so good. I like that he won with the knee again because again, you're setting up an Iron Man match. You got to set up a bunch of finishes, which Brian has. That's been his whole thing.
Waiting for a cattle mutilation here, man.
Yeah, maybe he's saving that for the pay-per-view, and that's how he gets like his first fall or something. But I love the match with the crowd. So I guess I didn't notice the crowd much, so they must have sucked. They were loud for the Acclaimed, but
yeah, they were a decent crowd. I don't know how often they've been in Dayton. Sometimes these grappling matches don't necessarily lend themselves to the crowd getting into it unless the crowd is a big fan of those type of matches. Like it's a really smarky crowd who can enjoy that type of stuff. If you have a more casual crowd who doesn't enjoy it can seem quote unquote slow or like they're not doing anything. And then it kind of leads to the crowd like slowly fading out.
yeah.
So eventually they come back towards the end when things start picking up. And I don't want to say that's what happened for me. And I want to say I did like this match. I really did like this match. I think I just had super high expectations for it and they just weren't reached for me. So it might be one of those things where I have to go back and watch it a little more objectively because I definitely I was so hyped about Thatcher coming in. So I liked it. I think maybe I need to temper my expectations.
I think maybe it would have met those expectations if this was like the TNT a TNT title open challenge and Thatcher was the one who answered it. I think the match would have been like a little more hype and better in that kind of context. But otherwise, when like, a person from the outside comes in for one of these, it's like there's a little less excitement to it. But I don't know, just the way there was so many little things in this match. I wish I actually did take notes for this, but I was like, oh, Rev's here. He's the professional. He's going to take the notes. But just so many times where Thatcher was in some sort of submission by Brian, and he just found ways to grab Brian's arm and try to work that in. And then it didn't always work. Sometimes Brian was able to move his arm out, and like I forgot one of them, he had him like he was choking him from behind, and he went to grab the arm, and Brian just kind of moved to the other side and locked in. And it was just little things where I'm like, oh, like if this was anyone else having this match, I probably would zone out at this point and not pay as much attention. But because it's Brian, and because I guess this is the type of match he thrives in, I was very engrossed in it. So I thought this was really good. And I'm a big fan of the Takeshita MJF part of this too, because this feud is doing so many things amazingly. It's making you hate MJF, which he's always pretty good at normally, but it's making you love Brian. He's making you look at Brian the same way we looked at him when he first came in before Hangman ruined him. But he has that sort of go to it. But people a really easy, in my opinion, not a great take of a criticism on MJF is that all of his feuds are the same. It's just, you have to jump through all these hoops and then to get the match with me. And it's like, bro, did you watch Bloodline stuff for 2 years before Sammy got involved? Like, talk about doing the shit at the same time. What works. Because at the end of the day, what MJF is doing is making his freaking challengers look credible. Like Brian's just winning on TV, which is what me and James have been complaining about for months. And what has he done lately? Granted, he's doing it all just to lose MJF, but like just for the sake of enjoying the ride, he's on TV every week winning matches. He's not losing to fucking nobody is like Daniel Garcia and fucking, and I only say that in hindsight because of how bad actually I said it when it happened the first time, but like especially in hindsight with how bad that turned out. But the loss is gonna mean something because he's being built up the same way Takeshita is. He won this week, so he can lose next week, but he's mixing it up with the world champ, and people are into it. Like people are gonna be hyped for that match. Not gonna go into it like.
Look how into I was into the Brian Cage match. I was like, it's fucking Brian Cage, but Takeshita got me, intrigued, and then like I said, they blew it out of the water.
This feud is so good. It's getting a B feud over inside of the feud. That's how good this feud is.
Yep.
A third party is being pushed in the feud. It's insane. And no one looks worse off for it because MJF is so good at making people look fantastic. He makes all of his challengers look credible. And he just, he has the best reactions to things. Like he is great at, he'll tear someone down, but then the second they stand up to him, he runs away like a chicken shit heel. Or like when the match got announced, the look on his face went from angry, like wanting to fight him, to like, to blowing up, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like,
yeah, I'll kill you too. What the fuck are you talking about?
It was so good. So everything about this was a home run for me. I can't wait for Brian to start a team. It'll be Brian's first team in AEW. Yeah, it'll be nice,
James.
If he needs someone to watch his back, so that'll be good for Brian. But I haven't seen Mark It Down and James in the same room together. That is true. I've seen Mark It Down and Wendy in the same room together, but we'll see. But yeah, overall, fantastic segment, fantastic match. Everything about this worked for me. I was a big fan of this, and I don't give a fuck how good the match is next week. It's better than what the step down we're taking next week.
Oh, well, we'll get there in a second. Because I want to agree with you on a bunch of points. First being the subtle things of these type of matches, like when the grappling, which is why I didn't write all of it down, because A, I don't know all the names of it. I'm not Excalibur. But B, how do you go through a match like that and describe all the subtle little details? I need more masks. I just wear hats instead. But, there's all those subtle little details in one of these matches where, a guy just swings his hips a certain way and he's able to reverse a hold. And it's like, it's impossible to sit here and describe that, an hour later. But that's what I love about these matches. When I watched Zack Sabre Jr., especially, he had a match in the Cruiserweight Classic that I just adored. And I don't think they hit a single strike, at least for 10 minutes. It was great. So I do like those style of matches. I got to go back and watch this. It was really good, but I want to watch it through more objective lens, like I said. And I also want to agree with your assessment of this feud. Like, they are getting everyone over, and it's not just MJF and Brian and Takeshita. Like, Brian's also getting over the guys he's faced. Like, Bandito was over huge after his match.
Yeah.
Takeshita's obviously getting a good rub from this. Cage, it's Brian Cage. It's like he's already an established guy, but he had that match with Takeshita, which I really enjoyed. So it led to that, which I'm here for. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens next week. But everyone, I think Thatcher also too, being exposed to a new audience is good for him. And I'm sure a bunch of people who hadn't seen him before came away from this being like, oh, this guy's good. I should follow him more. So this is one of the best booked title feuds, I think, at least for the main title, in a minute. I'm really excited how this is going to play out. Okay, so after a commercial, I think it was a commercial, we had a backstage promo from Swerve. For some weird reason, Swerve is just annoyed at Dustin Rhodes for like doing an interview or something. I don't know. I haven't seen Swerve in a couple weeks. I guess he's been on Rampage. Anyway, he also doesn't like Dustin because Dusty gave Keith Lee the moniker Limitless. So he just doesn't like Dustin. Cool. Way to just create a reason why. Anyway, neither Dustin nor Keith Lee are around, so he's got to fight some other second generation Nepo baby on Friday. So Brian Pillman Jr., come on down. So that'll be a great match. Oh, and then he also gave us the name of the mysterious tattooed man. Apparently, he's called Trench and not Taserface, which is a little disappointing.
I mean, Trench is a very stupid name, but like in a butch kind of way. So sure, I'll take that. Real quick, Eric said I think Danhausen gets a title shot on TV after Brian. I would love that. I would love that so much. Okay. You say that as a joke, Eric, but no one would dislike that.
I'm sure somebody in the chat could tell me. Has Danhausen had like a legit, I think he's had like one legit match in AEW, right? Like where he's like actually wrestled as a wrestler and not just like as a gimmick. Right? Was it when he brought the teeth back? I feel he done, because I've watched him in Ring of Honor. Like the guy can wrestle, but they just so far he's just been, Danhausen and you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to think of like he's actually done a match. James said he had a trios match and he killed it. So
yeah, that's the only thing I think of is there was a tag match off. I think it was against Castor and the Ass Boys, and that's when Bowens got out of the wheelchair and hit one of the Ass Boys with the crutch by mistake.
Yeah.
And then Danhausen pinned him. I wouldn't say killed it, James. He just actually did moves in that match as opposed to every other match he's been in where he just gets beaten in 30 seconds. But yeah, no, I actually think that would be fantastic just to have MJF just such a stark contrast from Mysterious blood feud to Danhausen. I'd love it. Because it would just be enjoyable because like there's nothing else to it. Just to have that Santino Marella moment of like like Danhausen gets one roll up and everyone's like, oh my god, he's gonna do it.
James is right. They faced Jeff Jarrett and the Slapnuts. It was him and the Best Friends.
Oh, was that a Rampage?
I think. I know it happened. I watched it happen. Danhausen showed up. He had the different face paint and like he brought the teeth. Oh, it was at the pay-per-view. It was at Full Gear. I'm an idiot.
No way, Full Gear? Really?
Yeah, he came out at Full Gear.
Oh.
That did happen. Unless I'm conflating two matches.
No,
whatever. He's wrestled before. He came out in like different face paint, and then the next day the next Dynamite, they asked him like, what was with the face paint? He was like, don't worry about it. Like, it was something like that. I'm sure James is going to hop in the chat, so probably tell me. But let's move on so we don't get caught up in this, and we'll get back to it later. Anyway, we had a backstage interview, which was supposed to be with Roosh and the rest of LFI, which includes Preston Vance now, which keeps tripping me out because he doesn't have a face mask on. Anyway, Roosh was announced as the next guy to face Bryan Danielson next week. So obviously, before interviewing can start, MJF shows up with a briefcase full of cash. And he tells Roosh that if he beats Bryan by any means necessary, there's 5 more suitcases where that came from. And then there's a funny little bit where Roosh says something in Spanish, and the translator just goes, "We agree." And MJF's like, "I'm pretty sure he said more than that," but sure. That I found that really fun. I only half understood what Roosh was saying. I got to go check the translation. I caught some of it, but he was talking too fast for me. But it was still funny as hell.
Oh, that was so good because like he went on this long tangent in Spanish. MJF just looks at him like, translate, dipshit.
Yeah.
Crowd pops huge. So that like you got a deal. And he's like, oh, it sounded like a lot longer than we've got a deal, but okay. Like MJF was so fucking good in this. Like, he as he always is, but like I've been two minds about it because I hate no disrespect to Roosh because he is great, but like in AEW fucking sucks, bears and nobody. And like it's just like we just had Thatcher who looked like a fucking killer. We had Cage who kind of looked like a monster. This was just a huge step down. But that aside, my gripes with the who of it all, I love MJF's. I love this format of feud, and yes, he does have to mix it up a lot, which he did with like Darby and like the Pillar promo, and then that feud. Like that's fine. You save this stuff for the big feuds. where you set up the obstacles, you have to knock them down. But like I said, it makes the challenges look credible because they're just racking up win after win after win, and then they're wrestling every week. So that's like kayfabe protection for them losing because of what they've been wrestling, MJF hasn't. So now that MJF is wrestling, that is flipping the format on its head a bit since he has to wrestle Takeshita. And they could do something where Takeshita pushes himself out of the limit that he's actually the one hurt going into the match. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying that's an option now because they're kind of flipping it on its head. But I just think the format works, and it's more interesting now because he doesn't have a faction anymore. He got rid of the firm. The Pinnacle's all but gone,
and if they are showing up, they're together in faces.
Yeah, so he's on his own, and he's still resorting to the same tactics, but now he's like Seto Kaiba now, and he just has he's throwing out briefcases full of money people, which is like way too much money for this job, bro. You could have had a quarter of that briefcase filled, and that briefcase is more than this dude's contract is worth. Like
a dodgeball amount of money when White Goodman's opening up and it's just a little stack of bills.
And it's so to be like, all right, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm getting paid for the match anyway, and this is like a bonus on top of that.
Money, $50,000.
Just way too much money. But it's interesting that he's still reverting to this tactic when he doesn't have goons, so he has to pay for them, which I guess does tie into the character and him signing this big contract with Tony, which is part of his character. That's not an outside thing. That's an in-character thing that he basically held Tony for fucking ransom and now is getting an insane amount of money. So I guess that is the benefit of that, is they can just throw away money like this for shit like this.
It's also the desperation too. Like, we're getting closer and closer to the pay-per-view, and he's getting desperate. He needs one of these guys to beat Bryan so he doesn't have to face him, or at least injure the fuck out of Bryan. You know what I mean? So he's willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money so, to have somebody beat Bryan. Like, he doesn't care. Like, money is no object at this point. All he wants is to be able to keep the title.
Yeah, and his investment is paying off. Bryan has the partially separated shoulder. He's wrestling in tape now, and that's only going to get worse as it comes to the pay-per-view. And in a way, I was just thinking of this as we were talking right now, but in a way that he's kind of putting over the title by doing this. Like, his whole pipe bomb was about not getting paid enough, and in kayfabe, he held Tony through the fucking roof for money. So he's making bank now off of this. And in wrestling kayfabe, you're the champion, you make more money. I hate when they bring that up because we don't believe it, but or if it's true, that's even worse, bro. You can't do that when you choose the champion. That's really fucked up. But he held him for all his money, and he's throwing so much of it away just to hold on to the title because it's that important, or he's making that much money that it's like him holding on to the title is the return on his investment. Well, so that he's making all that money back, and he's saying that, oh, this is how valuable this prize really is, that I'm spending millions to make even more millions, because this is going to continue into his next pay-per-view feud. He's going to do the same sort of thing.
Gotta spend money to make money.
So it would be interesting to see if he goes broke by doing this to keep the title for the next year, if that becomes part of it. Like, there's Twitter accounts that track celebrities or famous people or rich people's private jets, and track flight logs.
I know people who do it for college coaches during hiring season.
Yeah, so we need someone to do that for MJF spending money. I would like a Twitter account dedicated to how in the hole MJF is.
Fun fact though, Elon banned those Twitter accounts because somebody followed his and he got mad and banned those accounts.
Yeah, not the funnest fact, kind of
just a fuck Elon fact. But
yeah,
what I was gonna say about what you were saying about him spending the money to keep the title, he said a week or two ago that the title is his validation, right? That it makes his catchphrase true. So yeah, he's gonna do whatever he can to keep that, because not only does he want to be right, he wants to be on top, and he'll do whatever it takes to stay that way, even if it does mean blowing through a huge chunk of money.
I did not know wrestling was pay to win, bro. Holy shit.
Well, I was going to say, I know the winners get paid. I did not know it was pay to win. That's a good point. Okay, so after that, we had Jade Cargill versus Red Velvet for the TBS Championship match, which was the first of two championship matches tonight. Jade going for a 50-0 along with defending her title. I did like the symmetry of her facing Red Velvet again. They faced each other in Jade's first match, which was the tag match with Cody and Shaq. And now she's facing Red Velvet for her 50th. And I just wanted to say something before I go into the actual match. You know how James has been saying for the last couple of weeks before last week about Action Andretti, where he looked like he's thinking before he does things, and that's why he always seems like a half a step slower as opposed to when he was more fluid last week. I kind of feel like Jade is still doing that. She's obviously leaps and bounds better than when she started, and you could see it. She pulled out a couple moves tonight, and I was like, there's no way Jade could have done that even 4 months ago. But you can tell there's still a little hesitation in her step, and which makes her just a little bit off. So I feel better. She's improving, and I still think she's going to be fantastic. But you could still see that there. I just hope she can. I don't know if that's a result of maybe she just doesn't remember all of the steps to the matches, or she's not great yet at necessarily calling things in the match or seeing when people are going to do things and reacting to them. And she hasn't been wrestling that long. That takes a long time, to pick up those nuances, but it's still there. And I guess I don't want to say it takes me out of the matches, but it definitely doesn't lend itself to me paying attention to the match instead of paying attention to, Jade's, still a little bit off.
I can see what you mean.
And this is no knock on her. It's just something I noticed.
No, it's fine, because that's the thing is I think you can criticize Jade all you want, and it's usually rightfully so, but there is just something undeniable about her that's for any flaw you point out, there's an upside that outweighs that, so I think it's fair to criticize her, but it's also and obviously you of all people do this, but you do it with the open minds and the logic of, well, she's still improving, and the fact that she's where she is still pretty impressive. And
I'm trying to be constructive.
Yeah, there's undeniable upsides with Jade. So there are times where I don't care. I didn't care about this match at all, but it doesn't mean that I'm not glad Jade was on TV, or that I don't, see those reports that come out that she technically in a way is a needle mover. And as much as sometimes I don't understand that, and I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to that, sometimes it's something that's kind of undeniable. So that's fine. I think all criticism of this match would go on Red Velvet, because I think what you said about Jade and what James said about Action Andretti applies to Red Velvet, where I'm
it's probably true as well. I've seen her have really good matches, and I've seen her have matches where she sometimes hesitates. But I mean, she's been wrestling, I think they said 6 years. So that's obviously longer than Jade, but as compared to some people, that's not that long. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big Red Velvet fan. I don't see the upside there. Yeah, I don't get what Chad sees in her.
I know what Chad sees in her. It's not the wrestling.
Oh my god, I didn't realize Chad was like that. Okay. But I'm gonna take him to task on that one of these days. But if he ever fucking shows up here again, but
Chad will be back soon, we promise.
Yeah, sure he will. Sure he will. James's rap will maybe be here before Chad is here again. But yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of this match, but it's fine. It's cool that Jay got to 50. No major comments to say one way or the other, negative or positive. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I'll run it down really quick. Well, just some of the stuff. There was a really cool spot that happened in the picture-in-picture, and they showed the replay on it when they came back. where Jade caught Red as she was trying to do a diving crossbody to the outside. Jade literally carried her from like one side of the ring to the other, slammed her into the post, brought her back to the steps, and then pressed her above her head, went up the steps, and then threw her into the ring off of the top rope. And I think that's something that speaks to like Jade just has it. You know, some people just have it. Jade has it. She has that presence, the look, the strength, which is something you just can't teach. Like Jade has it. The wrestling will come. She's such a natural athlete that she will only continue to get better. But she has the thing you can't teach that. She has that. So that's why that's why she moves the needle. That's why they have pushed her so much and everything like that. She has it, and that's how it's going to be. So anyway, after Jade landed a pump kick where Red was able to kick out, Kiera Hogan came down and threw Layla Gray, who was at ringside, into the steel steps. This causes one official and Aubrey, who was refereeing the match, to come over and scold her. And then Red Velvet was able to hit a kick of her own amongst some other moves and pin Jade Cargill for at least 5 seconds before Aubrey realized what was going on to come over to make the 3 count. And Jade was then able to kick out at 2. Red is able to then lock in a submission, but Jade literally powers her way out of it, doing like the old Roman Reigns, I'm going to lift you with one arm bit. And finagles Red Velvet into the setup for Jaded, hits that, and picks up her 50th win. But I think this is the closest Jade has come to losing. Like, I think this also protects Red Velvet pretty well. She beat Jade Cargill straight up. There was a distraction. So, but
yeah, I guess that's my biggest gripe is that I can't take Red Velvet seriously as a threat to Jade. Like, you know how we have that one guy in our chat, Eric, that can't take Adam Cole seriously because of his size. Like, I kind of feel that with Red Velvet, where you can't put her in the ring with Jade and expect me to believe that for even a set. I don't even.
Rio beat Nyla. Rio's 95 pounds.
Yeah, that's not a great example because I also don't think that was believable. But
all right, okay,
that was even worse. I feel like you're helping my point actually. So thanks for that example.
I don't find that unbelievable. It's wrestling.
No, I usually don't, and 9 times out of 10, I don't. But like, what is Red Velvet doing to compensate for that? Like, when Rey Mysterio, I hate when Rey Mysterio beats big guys, but like when he does, he's doing something about it. Like, what was, I don't know, because like if you're a small person, that's fine. If you're faster than the big person, I could believe that. But like, Jade is fast as fuck. Red Velvet's not faster than her because Jade can take 2 steps and be on the other side of the ring, where Red Velvet would have to take 8 steps.
I think Red is quicker, but not faster.
I find that hard to believe too. Because like I said, I thought she was moving in slow motion a lot of the times, but I don't know. It's very rarely like that, because I don't want to be that one of those people that are like, oh, that's unbelievable. It's just, there are a few times when it happens that I just cannot buy it. And this is just one of the few times where I'm like, this doesn't get, maybe I'm wrong, because maybe I'm not giving Red Velvet enough credit or enough of a chance. I'm totally willing to admit that's possible, but I don't think she's good enough to make me, suspend that disbelief. Where I guess that's the best way to put it, is like, you have to be really good at making people suspend disbelief for that, and I don't think she's there. Like, if Action Andretti was facing Brian Cage, he would probably beat Brian Cage, but I'd be like, oh, I don't believe that, because you're not good enough at the craft for me to buy into the kayfabe of it. Because that's Brian Danielson could beat Brian Cage, and I'm like, yeah, you absolutely should. It would be an upset if Brian Cage won, because Brian Danielson's that fucking good, sort of thing. I don't know. I guess that's what I'm getting at. I don't know. I probably sounded a little bit like an asshole, but.
No, I can understand what you're saying, because I think when you are a smaller person and you need to make it believable that you can beat this bigger person, you need to bring some sort of like weapon, so to speak, where the people are like, oh, okay, they can use this to beat this bigger person, whether it's your like knowledge of leverage or submission holes, or you're just fast as fuck, boy, like whatever it is, like you need that thing. And I could see why you would think of something that Red Velvet had. probably just because we don't watch her enough, you know.
Yeah, to be fair, when you don't wrestle on TV that often, you know, it's hard for me to know what that thing is too. So yeah. Like maybe she does have it. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe she doesn't. We just don't know.
Like Rio, just to bring her back, I think she has the experience. She's been wrestling since she was like 12. She's been in the wrestling ring forever. She knows everything there is to know, or just about.
And she's very smooth with it. As much as I can, maybe I didn't love, like I don't love Rio the same way everyone else loves Rio, but like she is really good at things. Like yeah, I can't believe if she hits a shoulder tackle and Nyla went down, I'd be like that's fucking bullshit. But like, you know, if she rolls through a move because she's really smooth, it would look good enough for him. Like, oh, I can see that, like her carrying Nyla's momentum against her and transitioning that into some sort of offensive maneuver like that. That works, and that's a style. I'm sure she's had to wrestle that her whole life. So
yeah, she's really good at like leveraging people's weight against them and putting her entire body weight into moves, which is why she uses stomps a lot, a la Finn Balor, like who's also a smaller guy, relatively speaking. So, like she has that weapon. It's her experience and her knowledge of how to wrestle, especially at that size, which makes it believable, as opposed to Red, where we don't know what that thing is, that X factor, so to speak. All right, last segment that we had before the main event, which like obviously we already went over, and that was a quick backstage interview with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. She was in the medical training area after she got jumped earlier in the night. Renee asked her how she was doing, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm okay, you know, and if that's how Saraya and Tony want to play it, then so be it." And then Ruby just kind of like randomly shuffles in, like she came out into the frame like out of nowhere. It wasn't even she walked in. She just kind of like. Anyway, Ruby come over to see how she's doing, and Britt's like, "Aren't those your girls? Like, what the fuck?" Ruby denies that she had anything to do with it, and Britt's still suspicious, and she's like, "Oh, like you've known them a lot longer than you've known us." Ruby's like, "Look, I just wanted to know if you were okay." Britt's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And Ruby's like, "All right, whatever," and she leaves, and that was the segment. And then obviously we had the main event.
Well, actually, because I actually wanted to talk about this more than the TBS title match. I hadn't even mean to get lost in that, but
it happens.
But
go on.
I like this, but the order's wrong. So this should have happened, because why doesn't Britt's saying that and not trusting Ruby in that situation makes no sense, because you helped her win last week. So like that's almost her like returning the favor of being like, "Oh, you're okay." Like, you know, you literally helped this girl win. So like now you're all of a sudden like that. This should have been flipped. This should have been, the beatdown should have happened last week to write Britt out of the match, and then Ruby would check if she's okay, and then because it's a backstage beatdown, you could have filmed it in a way where Britt really wouldn't have had to take any offense because she was injured, and that's why she was out of the match.
Well, which is probably what they did tonight, because she's probably still injured.
Yeah, so you just do that last week, and then you have Ruby check on her, and then it becomes a singles match instead. So we have a kayfabe reason for it, even though I know she was injured, but like you could have just turned that into an angle like last week. Have Ruby check in, and then have Britt not trusting her then, because it would make sense at that point still, but then have that moment sit with her for a bit, and then that's what makes her decide to come out and distract Tony. Because otherwise, why would you come out? It was two people you don't like fighting. So like, what was? And the truth is, you don't have like, I mean, you have issues with Tony, but like now that Tony's turned into the dark side, like a lot of those issues are kind of gone. So like the order should have been different. If this was reversed and this just happened before the Tony Storm Ruby match last week, I would think this was fantastic as opposed to just fine, like, you know. But I'm glad.
It definitely also doesn't make more sense.
Yeah, we're getting this Saraya and Tony tag match on Rampage, which feels wild to put like Saraya's third match on Rampage, and against probably nobody's that it wasn't announced.
Yeah,
who the opponents were going to be.
Probably like Sky Blue or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Sky Blue is one of them for sure.
Sky Blue and Madison Rain, they've been tagging. I think I have to agree with you, because this made sense, but it did seem kind of weird, and maybe it was just a time thing where like there wasn't any mention of last week. And obviously Ruby showed up because Britt helped her last week, whether or not it was an unintended consequence, because I'm sure Britt's main motivation was to fuck over Tony Storm, not help Ruby win. And there's a difference there. But Ruby coming in, be like, hey, you good? And then Britt saying, you know, like, aren't those your people? Like, I had nothing to do with that. Like, I just came in to see if you're okay. And I wanted to thank you for helping me last week. And then Britt being like, oh, I wasn't doing it to help you. Like, you know, like, those are your, you know them longer than us. Like, what's good? And then Ruby being like, oh, I don't know. I just want to see how you're doing. Like, you could have worded it better so where it flowed more in terms of a storyline thing. The fact they just kind of not ignored it, but they just implied it, I guess, instead of just outright saying it. Sometimes you do have to tell a little bit. And I think ignoring last week verbally was a bit of a detriment, and then leads more into what you were saying, where maybe if were going to do it this way, it would have been better flipped.
Yeah, I mean, and it just would have. And there is an interesting story of Britt and Ruby because they're, they went
to war.
Yeah, forget Thunder Rosa.
The company
Ruby
sure has.
Actually was Britt's best rival, because the only reason we talk about Thunder Rosa like that is because of the matches. But like the feud was nothing. I don't even remember why they were feuding. It wasn't but like Ruby and Britt, they had those great promos when Ruby first came in, and that match main evented, and it didn't have to have a crazy stipulation. It was just a title match. I'm pretty sure it was the only women's title match that main evented, besides maybe the steel cage on St. Patrick's Day Slam, which I don't know if that main evented or not. I'm just assuming
it did.
Yeah, but it was a cage match. So like this is just a regular match. Nothing about it besides the fact it was just the two biggest names in the division at the time fighting for the title. And then they had the Owen Hart match, and they did have that reluctant show of respect at the end of the match. So there's like something interesting there, but like I just don't think the company is telling that story. I think that's me noticing as opposed to that's the story being told. But
and sometimes AEW wants you to do that. They write it where they want you to notice things instead of just throwing it in your face. But I think there's a balance between the two. And sometimes they go a little too far towards the subtleties instead of actually just being like, hey, remember Ruby helped Britt out last week? Or do you think Ruby would remember Britt helped her out last week and maybe mention it?
Yeah, so like there's still a lot of potential with this, and it's at least something. It's a story, and even though the champion is in it, it's not about the title, which is kind of nice. It's almost like maybe the title shouldn't even be in this story, but like, or if it was gonna be, it should be on Britt or Saraya or Tony or someone more.
I think it does eventually lead probably to Saraya versus Jamie for the title,
and then Jamie squashes Saraya.
Yeah.
Everyone's jaw will drop, but
God, I hope Jamie wins that match. I wouldn't want Saraya with the title, at least not yet. It's too early.
Nope. Put it on your stars, bro.
Look what happened the last time they gave it to an ex-WWE person who had been away for a really long time.
Yeah, fucking the trios titles got ruined.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I know you forgot we had trios champions for a
second. No, it took me a second. I was like, none of those guys were in WWE. Oh.
Yeah, well, I don't think the Bucks have beef with Saraya, so they won't prod her until she acts out, hopefully. But we'll see.
It's wrestling. Anything's possible.
Real quick before we wrap up, because we're pretty much done here, but you guys notice James isn't here right now, and I'm just gonna tell we got into a little bit of an argument, a little falling out with them, and it's a little bit of a tender subject, but I just feel like maybe I'll put it out there and you guys can weigh in. So basically, James made us all really uncomfortable. So we all watched the Royal Rumble together. Eric and I went to his house. And we had to test for COVID beforehand because fucking concentration camp over there. We have no rights apparently, and we're all a bunch of sheep or whatever bullshit. But Chad and Rev they couldn't make it because Chad lives in Delaware, let's say, I don't know. And Rev,
It
you
was
live in Buffalo, I assume.
it was my birthday weekend, and I was still drunk.
Yeah. I feel like we said the same things, but you guys joined us via Zoom. We were talking for a little bit before we went live, and you know, the guys noticed. They noticed that I had a pink undershirt under my sweater, and it wasn't really sticking out much, but like they noticed it, and it was a color that I would call, or most people would call, hot pink, but James called it sexy pink, and it just made us so uncomfortable that we just couldn't talk to him for like the rest of the night. It was so when the cameras turned on, we got into character and we did our jobs, and as you all saw, that stream went so smoothly, and it was totally fine. There was no issues there, thanks to producer boy. But like once the cameras weren't rolling, it was just so uncomfortable, bro. Why does he call it sexy pink? Like hot pink already is a bad name for the color, but like
It's a rough name for a color.
yeah, but when you change that, like people have accepted it, it's harmless. But when you change the one word to a very similar, it's a very similar word that you find in a thesaurus or whatever, but it changes it so drastically, and just think of how uncomfortable it is to say sexy pink. That's just not right. It feels clunky coming out of my mouth, and it's bad. And he said it with a straight face, and it was just so uncomfortable. But anyway, subscribe. This is the call to action. Subscribe, hit the hot pink subscribe button.
Can we it'd be so cool if we could make the button like a different color.
All right, come on, YouTube, step your game up. Follow us on social media. Anything else we got to do to throw home?
Well, I was gonna ask you what you thought of the show as a whole, but
I'd probably give it. It was an okay show. Like there was nothing bad per se besides the Red Velvet Jade match, I guess. But like it was inoffensive, so probably like a 6 out of 10, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fairly filler episode, which sounds weird because there was a title change at the end of it. But I thought we got a bunch of good stuff out of it. The promos weren't great, but I liked the opening match with Mox and Hangman. I obviously loved the Takeshita Cage match. The Brian Thatcher match was, really cool and a nice change of pace. And I thought the Darby Joe match was awesome. So, you know what? I got 4 good matches on a show. I was going to almost say in the middle of January, but at the start of February, and a month out from a pay-per-view. I'm good with it. This was a good episode. It wasn't great, but it was good. And sometimes an episode is just going to be good. And I'm okay with that. John, thank you for the happy birthdays. I appreciate it. I'm 30 now. I'm old and everything hurts. Anyway, as Danny was saying before, I would like to thank everybody so much for watching the Mark It Down podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe. You will get more wonderful anecdotes from Danny about colors and James mispronouncing them. You will also get episodes every week. We have another one coming out most likely tomorrow. So when we can find anything to talk about, I don't even know what that will happen this week in the world of wrestling, but I'm sure we'll find something to talk about. It's wrestling. You will also get Danny's Raw Fast Forwards on Mondays. Gym Pack Zone. James talks about Impact on Thursdays. We go live after pay-per-views, as you saw last Saturday. So be sure to like and subscribe to get all of that stuff. You can also check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. I highly recommend the Instagram. Dane does a great job over there. I also hop on the Twitter sometimes. It's fun. But you can get all that stuff in the description below. So for Danny Hernandez, my name is Nick Cummings. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you here next time on the Mark It Down podcast. Have a good night, everyone.